Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Passive House Accelerator's 11th Global Passive House Happy Hour of our second year and episode number 63. Thanks for joining us. I'm Prudence Ferreira. I'm a senior member of the Carbon Neutral Design Group at BR Plus A Consulting Engineers and lead their Passive House team. And no matter why you ended up here and what you hope to learn, you're in the right place. You've come to a great group of people that are on a mission to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through the built environment and have as much fun as we can while we're doing it. And that's fun with a PH. I'm going to keep my opening remarks short as we've got a really packed episode, but I would love you all to unmute yourselves for another toast and join me in toasting the halt of drilling in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, Biden's reversal of Trump's leasing plan last November. All right, here's to the polar bears.
Here.
Hey, good on you, mate. It's good on you.
All right, thank you. I have a framed picture of a polar bear family right above my desk. That's actually a large part of why I do what I do. So this episode, we're going to be joined by 4 members from a Vancouver project team who are going to share lessons learned from a mixed-use multifamily project. But before that, we're super excited to be joined by Jenny Eber, policy enthusiast, social justice idealist, and the constituent coordinator for the FIAS Alliance. Thanks for joining us, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Well, thank you, everyone. Let me just get my tabs ready to present. My name is Jenny Eber. I am the constituent coordinator for the FIAS Alliance. Ta-da! Here is the FIAS's new logo and our new PowerPoint template. So thank you for letting me share it with you tonight. What is the FIAS Alliance? The FIAS Alliance is the membership branch of FIAS organization. And where did it start? When a long time ago, we all used to have to convene in a room together in person. People used to take entire week or weeks off and come and learn about this new idea called passive building. And it was something that really drew everyone together. And once this group of people was together, they kind of formed this bond. They're pioneers in this new way of building. And like Prudence said, wanting to save the polar bears, wanting to do what's right for the world, and to just build these better communities, these better places to live. So that became a community in itself. And FIAS as an organization has used the Alliance to facilitate and continue that connection and that community group. So we focus on outreach and bringing stakeholders and practitioners together. I like to say passive house enthusiasts. So it is someone who is certified as a practitioner of passive building, someone who works in policy and sustainability and really wants to put it together, someone whose mom helped them realize their dream of passive building and wants to support the organization moving forward. So everyone comes together and is welcome in the Alliance. The Alliance is governed by a council in a committee structure and then has an oversight board, which I get to meet with weekly and have had the pleasure to learn a lot from. I'm new to the passive house space, but it has been amazing to be surrounded by this group of people that makes up the Alliance and everyone who's striving to push passive building forward and come together and learn from each other. So it's made up of members, certified or not, professionals of not, as we know on this happy hour, that anyone who has an interest can kind of come together and support this idea. So this is the Alliance is a formal way for FIAS to support that community. What do? We do a lot of things. So there's a couple things that happen. One of the big things that I want to talk about is the annual meeting, rebranded as FIASCon, which is happening in October. So more about that later. But also we have monthly and quarterly events, which also is my main focus to help bring those to the community. What are those great events that are happening all the time? Not as often as the happy hour, this great experience, but also something that we provide to members is this office hours idea. So imagine that you are in architecture school or trying to do a new program and you just have a question you just need to ask your professor. So we're providing that opportunity virtually to come to FIA's staff and to ask questions about projects. We have a rotating cast of kind of 3 themes. So general questions on projects, which is hosted by FIA staff, usually our certification staff, someone comes, and then Lisa White, our associate director, comes. And it's an open forum. People, members, you have to be a member to come to this event, send their questions before, and then they can get answers. We are debuting this month for members our mechanical systems office hours. So someone from our technical team will be there to ask questions or to answer questions about the mechanical systems people have in their projects. And then we at FIAS use the WFI passive energy modeling software, and we have a dedicated office hours to address questions about that as well for users, and people are a little bit afraid of starting to use it but want to be certified through FIAS. And that is actually run by a group of instructors and volunteers, and we're really lucky to have such a great audience for that. So we are working really hard to support the work of our members in their projects through this monthly event. We also have monthly webinars, which are free to members, and I know I've seen a few of you on them. Also, they are available to the public for a small fee. This is where people can get their continuing education credits or your CEUs to maintain a certification if you're certified through FIAS. And then a special benefit for members is that I record all of these things. All of these things are available after. If you're a member, it's available for free. If you're not a member, the webinars can also be viewed for a fee. So we're trying to get information out there, touch new topics. Everyone's interested in different things. We have had webinars on decarb building. We've just had one with Jeff Gephardt on appraisals, getting your house ready for appraisal as a passive house. You have a little extra work to do. And then coming up this month, Lisa White is going to do something on FIAS GEB, so Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings, which is kind of a new frontier that we're exploring as well. And those things like that are happening every month. We'll have a webinar every month. So it's really exciting, and it's really been a nice way for me to meet people outside of the community as well. So this is a pretty inclusive group, and I encourage you to come check us out as well. One of the member exclusive events is called the Fireside Chat. And when I started talking to people, when I started this year, everyone really missed each other. So I thought, how do we get people in a room together? And the idea of what would happen if we were in a bar and we were talking about passive building or building affordable projects. So this is something that we facilitate through a Zoom call. We've had different people coming and just kind of talking, putting it out there. What do you do in your affordable housing projects? We had Tim McDonald, we had Michelle Tinner, we had people from mostly the East Coast for that conversation, but we've had conversations with passive house homeowners and just a couple different conversations on retrofits and just bringing kind of people who aren't the usual suspects together to talk about what's going on and what's the future and what are some trouble points in passive building and giving them a platform to connect. And that's been one of the most rewarding parts, is watching people in these conversations create new relationships and really work together. So if you're a member for FIAS, I really encourage you to check these out. They're pre-recorded, so you don't have to come in live, and they're just available in the member portal. So lots of opportunities. New quarterly events for members are also rolling out, welcoming new members. Their quarterly event to connect people. FIAS's model is that once you've gone through certification, you automatically get a year of, or not certification, so training. So an individual being certified, you automatically get a free year of membership. So you get to take part in all of these events, and then we do some welcome events as well to connect people. If you found us and are a member not through, our training series, then you're also welcome to these events, and we want to pull together. And then because FIAS is climate-based, there's a lot of different ideas based on where you live. We have regional events and kind of make it possible for people in Arizona to also talk to people in Southern California, because their climates are a little bit different than their counterparts in Northern California. So all of those things are happening through the FIAS Alliance and for our members, and it's been a really exciting year. One of the historic benefits of being a FIAS member has been discounts on training courses. FIASCon is coming up, and there's a significant discount on that. On certifying a project is a really big discount for members. And then we also have resource libraries. So that climate specific data to get your numbers and understand where your targets are is available to members, and also the webinars and the recordings of everything that we do throughout the year, especially if you need to catch up on some CEUs, some continuing education credits. Those are available to members as well. Some extra support, and these aren't member exclusive events, but you do have a few more people you can reach out to if you are a member to get a red flag or quick review of your project, a quote on a certification for a project. Feasibility studies are something for both projects and products. We now have Windows and a few other products that we certify, so those are available. And then access to staff. There's some email. I'm one of the people, my official title is constituent coordinator, as we've said. And so if a member has a question, I can be their first email and I can direct them to the person they need to talk to and sometimes answer those questions. So there's extra support for members. If you're not a member and you email me, I will still get you an answer because I think this community is really important. Like I said, FIASCon 2021 is coming in person, and we will have a virtual option. We anticipate in the fall, October 12th through 16th. There might be a few more restrictions, so we are making it possible for people who are comfortable and not comfortable to travel and still attend, or not travel and still attend. So we'll be in Tarrytown. This is a beautiful view of Tarrytown / Sleepy Hollows, and who can resist Sleepy Hollow in the fall, October especially. So please come and join us. There will be project tours. We're actually going to do some of projects in the Hudson Valley and also some in New York City. So that'll be really exciting. An annual member meeting. You can meet me in person. You can see a few other people in the area in your region in person. And then we have early bird rates and students and seniors as well. So we are really excited to be in person and to have everyone gather. I know it's not quite as soon as next week, but it'll still coming our way, and hopefully we get to see a lot of your smiling faces. We also have the design competition. Last year was my first time experiencing the design competition virtually, and it was pretty amazing. So multiple categories: commercial, single family, multifamily, and it can be certified, a certified project by anyone. It doesn't have to be a FIAS certified project, and it just has to be certified by the judging date, which would be October 13th, I believe. So please, please submit your projects to us and keep your eyes out for emails about that. And then speaking of email me if you have any questions about the design competition, FIASCon, membership, different things like that. I'm here. I will drop my email into the chat. Follow us on social media and ask your questions. FIAS is really excited to be part of this amazing community, and I especially want to meet a lot of you. So please don't be shy, and I hope to meet more of you soon.
Thanks, Jenny. We really appreciate you joining us and letting us know what's going on with the FIAS Alliance.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. So I think we're over to Zach for some announcements. Is that right, Zach?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Prudence. And thanks, Jenny. The work you're doing is so important, and it's great to learn about the opportunities to plug in with the FIAS Alliance. So really appreciate it. So on to announcements real fast here. Every week, we publish a week in preview article on our website. And you can find that here at Explore Articles, and then right here. And we talk about our events as well as the podcast of the week. And the podcast episode this week is with Jose Sosa Rueda of the Pacifist Institute Latin America, the Colombia chapter, or Panama chapter, sorry. He is the founder of the Panama chapter. So he talks about Passive House in Panama, and a really great conversation with Matthew Cutler-Welsh. We also have some important events coming up, including the North American Passive House Network's conference next week. It's a hybrid conference, and we have a discount code that we'll be sharing. I'll share in chat in just a moment. We are kicking off kind of on the eve of the conference on Wednesday. The happy hour is aligned with it, the programming we're doing, and we'll also be conducting interviews, video interviews at the conference itself. I actually get to go to New York, which is super exciting. to do some interviews, and we'll also do an online social on Thursday after the Thursday sessions. So there'll be a chance for us for the folks who are attending the hybrid conference remotely to connect, and Sean is going to help facilitate that, which is really awesome. We also have the Centering Equity and Passive House Community Workshop coming up on June 24th. I'll talk about that later tonight. And I'm really excited. Here we have socials, of course, Building Science Friday with Mark Willey. And I'm really excited about the FIAS GEB event and a presentation by Lisa Jackson that we were just talking about, and I signed up for it and looking forward to it. So anyway, you can get information there, and lots of educational content coming up. So Lisa Jackson is a sustainability person at Apple. I don't know where I got that. So that's it for me. Now, Prudence, please take it away.
Okay, all right. So I have quite the group of introductions tonight. We've got 4 gentlemen with us. Paul Warwick and Jeremy Huerta, both from Bold Construction, and then Scott Kennedy and Luke Hahn, both from Cornerstone. So we'll start with Bold Construction and Paul. Paul's been working hands-on in the Vancouver construction business for the last 40 years as a carpenter and contractor, and then the last 30 years as a construction manager. And over his time on site, he's developed quite the passion for building durable and energy efficient projects. And he first became acquainted with Passive House standard on a working tour of Germany in 2009. And since then, he's been involved in several successful low energy, high performance projects as the pre-construction manager with Bold Construction. His colleague, Jeremy Huerta, has a master's degree in civil engineering and urban planning from INSA in Lyon, France. And he's a PMP certified project manager at Bold Construction, recently completed the Passive House course, and has been involved in multiple mid-rise projects with Bold Construction. Now is serving as the project manager for the Peak Passive House project that we're going to hear about in a few minutes. Scott, most of you know if you've been hanging around the happy hour. Scott is a professional engineer as well as a graduate of the UBC School of Architecture, that's University of British Columbia, and he's been a principal of Cornerstone Architecture since 1988. In 2013, he found Passive House by attending a course at UBC because he wanted to understand what it actually takes to create a low energy building that performs as predicted. And that cascaded, inspiring him to attend conferences, talks, and eventually become a founding board member of Passive House Canada. He has the "you should consider building a Passive House" conversation with every client, and has some success with 3 projects built, Passive House projects, and many more on the way. And then Luke, who works at Cornerstone with Scott, he has his Master's of Architecture and a Bachelor in Environmental Design Studies from Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he is an architect at Cornerstone who's taken numerous Passive House courses, PHPP and Design PH, and he's involved in multiple Passive House projects at the firm with Scott. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have 2 from the design side and 2 from the construction side. Take it away.
So the Peak is a 6-story passive house mixed-use building with retail and restaurant use on the first story and 52 rental dwelling units on the upper stories under the secure market rental policy. The site is located at the intersection between Rupert Street and East 22nd Avenue. This is the current construction progress so far.
So you can see we're framing the level 5, and we're also, you can see on the concrete floor, we're already installing the storefront, which is vinyl windows, which we want to talk about later.
Right. So we will be focusing on the 5 themes, and both the design team and the construction team will have different issues to consider. So starting from the compactness, the peak's surface area to volume ratio doesn't look too bad. It's within the favorable compactness ratio, and it's similar to two of our other passive house projects, the Heights and the Little Mountain co-housing. So however, the building massing is still stepped quite a bit. This is primarily driven by the planning department's urban design agenda and the client's desire to maximize unit count and FSR. So the complicated site condition and sloping also adds complexity to the building form.
So this is a 3D representation that the structural consultant sent us. It was really interesting because it shows how the consultants are really involved in the project for this one.
So the form factor of the building is important as it directly affects how much insulation is required. The graph shows a heat loss form factor. So as the ratio gets lower, the required average building U value can be higher, which means the walls and window can have less insulation. So from a modeling standpoint, fewer corners means fewer thermal bridges to model. And this was our list of thermal bridge inputs in our PHPP model. And also simplifying window types and reducing the number of mullions will help a lot as well. So what we found was that solar heat gain should not be relied on as a major contributor to heat gain. What we want to do is to balance the solar heat gains and shading so the heating demand is as close to 15 kilowatt as possible. And if the heating demand is too low, it means the building is likely to overheat too high and you don't achieve passive house. So the high our windows are high performance Innotech windows and doors, and they are certified PHI component.
I see George is on the
Those are
call
the
from
windows.
Unitech.
Yeah.
Sorry. Jeremy, go.
So the windows are, sorry. So we're using those windows for the storefront and the units, and those are really heavy, so it's hard to install. And we decided to go with a professional installer, so Innotech is installing them too, instead of what we usually do, which is the framers. And also the cost on those windows is slightly higher due to the performance.
And so the other thing is there are multiple methods to limit overheating. So the passive method would be opening windows and using fixed shading or deep balconies. The active method would be operable shades and with supply air cooling using heat pumps. There are also rough-ins for ceiling fans. Smart glass or self-tinting glass can be considered if required. So regarding shading, we originally decided to go with manual sliding shades since it's mechanically simpler and it's a passive system. However, as we discovered, the mounting details are more difficult to deal with from a building envelope standpoint, and also the amount shaded can vary greatly as it depends on the angle of the sun and it relies on the occupant to manually move the shades.
Yeah, so we also had issues with supply because we didn't have many suppliers from local suppliers. All the suppliers we found were from Europe, and the cost was therefore higher. And with the COVID situation, we're a bit preoccupied of the delays that could generate.
Yeah, and when we also found that modeling these, we have to model the shades twice, and the weighted average is used. And these all increase the variable in the model, which affects the accuracy. So after a pricing exercise by Bold, we decided to go with the automated exterior blinds from MHZ. So these provides a constant 92% shading throughout and allows for higher solar heat gain glass, and it's automated for better control. These are also solar power with rechargeable batteries.
Also in the install side, they are easier to install, and we avoid all the detailing we had to do with the other shades. So there's no envelope issues with those.
So we had RDH do a critical suite and overheating analysis on the building. And the results were under the current model, there are only 5 hours above the 80% acceptability limit. But with the 2050s model, overheating becomes more of an issue at around 602 hours. These were modeled with the exterior manual shades and partial mechanical cooling. Another important design challenge is detailing the continuity of air barrier in section and in plan. And Bo can speak a bit about the education of the trades.
Yeah, this is the one we're working on right now because we're doing the framing, which is a key part for the air tightness. So we had a conference with E3 who helped us and the trades to prepare for the air tightness, for all the pre-stripping on the walls and the ring joist. And that was really useful for everybody. It was nice to see that all the trades were really involved in keeping the building airtight.
So the air tightness is pretty critical in meeting the 0.6 air changes per hour for passive phones. So for visualization, that's 400 square inch of hole for the entire building envelope, or it's equivalent to 4 letter size pieces of paper. And here's a sequencing diagram of how the air barrier is installed at the floor lines. So basically the floppy piece of air barrier membrane is wrapped around the rim joist and is connected to the wall above. And here's just a construction image.
Yeah, so we have different details, some at the edge of the deck, some at the edge of the building, and transitions between outside parts and interior parts.
And smart membranes were used on this project to allow for more insulation the roof cavity. This is because it allows drying to the interior. Another consideration to control air leakage is with Epdm gaskets. Every penetration through the air barrier should have an Epdm gasket seal to it.
So we haven't done that on site yet because we're doing the framing right now, but we've already discussed that with Cornerstone and the consultants. And that's an example from another project from Luke, I think.
So, and due to the complexity of the details, we've developed a 3D model to visualize all the components. So this shows the membrane pre-stripping and taping required at the different interfaces. This is showing the overhang and the rainwater leader. This is with the cladding and the curb. This is at the interior layers. So we found the mock-up was really helpful with both the design team and the construction team. And this is the current mock-up on site.
Yeah, right now we're working on the decks there.
And here's just a window detail at the floor line. That's the current site condition. So our main exterior wall assembly achieved the R value of 31. There's the roof assembly, which shows the smart membrane in green at the underside of the joist, which allows the cavity to be filled with blow-in fiberglass insulation. So our roof has a step structure to fit the ventilation ducts and the DX coils in the ceiling of the space. So another design decision was to move the rainwater leader from inside of the building to the exterior of the building to reduce heat loss. And the challenge was to keep it away from the walls for waterproofing and as a way to, or come up with a way to slot it through the balcony. So our mechanical contractor, Omega, provided a solution to drop in a single continuous stainless steel pipe through the balconies. And at every level, there will be Menzies and storm collars for waterproofing.
And as a shop drawing they provided last week, so we're working on it right now with Luke.
And this is showing the deck transitions. This one is showing the concrete detail and the inverted roof design at the concrete level. This is a current progress photo at the slab edge. And this is a window curve detail at the concrete level. And this is the interior side where the wood furring are kept off the concrete with thermal clips to reduce thermal bridging. This is showing a window curve waterproofing at the concrete level. And this is the window install detail.
Yeah, so we have the window already installed and we're ready for the testing soon.
So, and another big heat loss element is the plumbing vents. So one way to resolve that is with the use of AAVs and papas. And currently there's an alternative solution to use these exterior rated AAVs only on the roof of the building. And that's been accepted by the city of Vancouver. The ideal way is to remove all the other venting or other branches. So blower door test for air tightness will be one of the key elements at the commissioning stage.
So we're not
one of the things. Sorry.
The 6th floor to do kind of a mock-up for the whole building to kind of find the leaky points on that one unit.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've isolated one suite. We're going to be taping the floor, doing special preparation around it so that we have one good sample to test our exterior wall, our parapet, and our roof assemblies to see how we're doing.
Yeah, so yeah, all the ducts will have to be sealed. And for a full building test, holes will need to be left in the wall if there's no common corridor. But in our case, we do have a common corridor. So another important item is the HRVs or ERVs. So one stack typically serves around 9 suites with 2 suites per floor. And there's one heat pump on the roof to temper the supply air with some cooling and heating. And it's controlled by the ERV. This is a typical floor showing the suites served by each ERV stack. The ERV are located on the roof with the DX coil in the ceiling below. And by zoning the suites into stacks, it allows for similar temperature condition per stack based on the sun's position to control the temperature of the air being supplied.
So one of the keys on that floor is we wanted to put the cooling coil and heating coil within the thermal envelope. And so we've elected to kind of come through the roof out into the corridor where we can service that coil and then back down into this vertical stack of the suites for the supply side.
And also the system allows for different temperature set points. So for hot water generation, we're using the sand and CO2 heat pump because it's more cost effective compared to conventional water heaters. For this project, we're using 4 sand units linked in series to provide all the hot water required. And all the hot water pipes are measured to provide a more accurate model of the internal heat gains. And yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Scott or Paul, is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we dive into questions?
Well, I think what we can talk about is that we did start early with bold construction, and we talked about exterior insulation versus interior insulation versus how the wall system was going to work. And at the time, that was the choice of wall that was made with the 2x8 framing with the 2x3 service cavity wall. Quite honestly, I was thinking that the 2x3 would just be held up and nailed. You can nail a 4-inch nail through a 2x3 and get it cross-strapped. There was a slight decision to actually pre-frame those walls. So they're going to be laying loose inside the building, but the studs are offset, staggered, and there's a little horizontal block that got added during the pre-framing. So there's something to anchor them to, because the 2x3 is a little flimsy going 9 feet. So those are some of the decisions that got made as we went. And I think we're one of the key pieces we found on a lot of these buildings is trying to get your airtight membrane in concert with your deck waterproofing, because they burn it off all the time with the torch, and then you got a problem. So we're now trying to protect it with plywood, so that in fact, rather than having the joist right out flush to the plywood, we bring it in a 1/2 inch so we can bring the plywood down over that and protect that membrane after it's on to get the air tightness, and then the torch isn't going to burn it off. So a lot of little lessons like that you just find out when you get on a site and realize you have a problem. I know Paul hasn't said anything. He's usually pretty talkative.
Well, no, I was just, Scott, I was just going to say we ran into that very problem about burning membranes this week. And I'm afraid the jury's still out on that. It's very difficult to do on a wood frame building. Still trying to work that out. I wish there was a membrane that we didn't have to torch in this situation. We were actually at the point of installing. We wanted to pre-strip and install the doors on multiple levels, of course. And we realized, working our way through it, that with the design of the roof package, the actual membrane with insulation, that was wishful thinking. So we're going to do, we are now delaying the installation of the doors until we've done the roof package. And of course, as you mentioned before, the problem for us here is we're not supposed to be using torch-on plywood. It's really frowned upon by the insurance industry, of course. So that's how it is. And of course, I'm sure many of the builders out there have had the same experience. I know we have, of actually melting these UPVC windows, which is, of course, tragic, considering the cost. So, yeah, there you go. It's funny too, Scott, to your point about exterior insulation before. As you know, I was somewhat skeptic of the 2x3 wall on the inside of the 2x8 wall approach, but as the market turned out because of the pandemic, I don't know what the experience is elsewhere in North America, but the cost of mineral wool, which is typically used here as exterior insulation, has gone through the roof. So we actually, as it turns out, this was a very prudent decision to design the building the way we have, with the 2x8 wall and the 2x3 backup wall behind the air barrier.
Hey, Sean, I failed to share a drone video that Jeremy shared at the very top. So I'm just gonna turn that on as you start the questions.
Perfect. Let you fire that up. So I'm actually gonna let well, wait, let's just watch the drone footage and then we'll get into questions.
As you can see, this is in beautiful Vancouver with gorgeous mountains to the north, but the city made us blank the windows to the north, actually put obscure glass in them because they didn't want us to look over the neighboring yard.
Kind of ironical, considering that yard will be turned into another building this size in a few years' time.
I know, but that's what we deal with. There's always a lot of discussion about the commercial, and is the commercial certified or not? And we do know that one of the tenants in the commercial is going to be a restaurant, and I tried my darndest to get them to go to cooking with induction cooking, and maybe even if it wasn't quite a certified kitchen, at least a green kitchen. And I just had no success at all. I just couldn't get there. And part of it's cultural, right? So there's definitely, it's an Asian restaurant where they're so used to wok cooking and all of that kind of stuff. And it's hard to get them over the line. So it will be a passive house envelope in that all the envelope pieces are passive house. So in the future, whatever goes in there could technically be a certified. But at the moment, we're going to certify the whole building, and we treat the ground floor as if it's office and use those heat gains for office, and that's part of the certification process.
Excellent, Scott. Thanks for clarifying. We're going to start with Braun with questions, just because her first was kind of more of a remark, but then she came back with another question. But I just like how she asked, how many city planners are on the happy hour tonight? Anyone, question mark? And because there may not be too many, if you are dealing with a city planner, this is probably a really good video that once Zach and the Accelerator team post it, you might want to just say, hey, good morning, planner. You might want to spend 20 minutes watching this morning with your coffee, because there's some juicy stuff here. But Bronwyn, you did have a question, but I appreciated that comment. So why don't you kick things off?
Thanks, Sean. So I'm always sort of trying to go upstream from where we're at the implementation stage, and asking, from your experience, Scott, and your lovely team here, what would you tell the city planner about the impact that that their planning setbacks, the step backs, had on not only the thermal bridging, which is a lot of cost associated, but the long-term durability of that building, because you've got sort of offset loads. And then as we're shifting to include embodied carbon calculation, the amount of additional concrete those setbacks require. Because connecting those all together is not just about daylighting for the neighbor whose building will become a similar building, but let's try and connect the dots for planners so that we can get them aligned. So
I'd say the good thing, Bronwyn, is that the planning community is in Vancouver starting to understand this, and there have been a couple of approved much simpler buildings in this. We probably could have designed a simpler building, but we probably would have given up a few apartments to do it. And that's always part of the discussion, is just how hard can you push to get these things up? I find that the biggest thing is, particularly if you're using a vertically stacked duct system for your ventilation, that's actually where the really tough part is, to get those shafts aligned with different floor plans and different efficiencies. And I mean, Vancouver real estate in this part of Vancouver, if it was a condo, would sell for $1,200 a square foot, and as a rental, it's probably they would sell a rental building like this for something in the order of $750, $800 a square foot, something like that in Vancouver. And so every square foot counts, every rentable area counts. The shafts, fortunately, the shafts don't count against floor space in Vancouver, but this was a rezoning, so we didn't actually have a floor space limit on it. It was just whatever we can get on the site and whatever they'd approve. And so that's kind of how we got there. So we kind of overly complicated it for ourselves, and we recognized that. And then there were some code changes that are part of the new code that caused us to have to jump through a bunch of hoops for, in my opinion, no apparent reason, because the new code already knew it was coming, but they just won't acknowledge. So it's just that kind of bureaucratic, stubbornness, I think. They just don't ever want to go out on the line, on a limb, because everything they see is a precedent, and that becomes always a problem.
So it looked like the setbacks you had were you put them on the back side of the building, not on the street side, which was kind of curious. Usually they're on the street side. Just quick follow-up. Yeah. Why was that?
Well, Vancouver was okay with the 6-story on the street side, but it's the relationship to the neighboring single family that they were mostly concerned about. So both times we were adjacent to single family neighborhoods, which, you know, Vancouver's in the middle of giant city plan, very controversial. We're going to be looking at 6-story buildings on a lot of our arterials, and in October, it's going to be a major war between the haves and the have-nots. And that is it's just the truth, right? There's an awful lot of privilege in single family housing in Vancouver, and it's, you know, there's a lot of interesting conversations going on about the fact that our government is now going to subsidize energy retrofits in single family houses, and sort of everybody's here saying, well, why are we subsidizing the rich?
Yeah.
But,
Wow.
you know,
Same
it's always
conversation everywhere on the West here, Scott. It's so
Yeah.
fascinating, and you know, it's great to hear that you know, everybody's sort of fighting that same fight everywhere, and we've got to get beyond it, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, the good
anyway,
thing about Vancouver is we've had Passive House Canada started here, and it's got a good foothold here. There's a lot of awareness in the community. It's a conversation that everybody knows what you're talking about in the design community when you talk about a passive house. It's still very difficult to get builders on board. And quite honestly, we're a little bit eroded by our own step code. So now the highest step code is a kind of more like a low energy building, right? It's a good building, nothing wrong with it, but it's not a passive house. And we do have we did manage to get bonuses for passive house in many, doesn't apply everywhere, but in a lot of areas. So, and we have BCIT to educate the trades. You know, there's a lot of good things that are happening here that allow us to have these conversations. And you know, Bold has stepped right up and was really intrigued and participating. We got Scott Construction on another one participating with us, and they might be on the call. I told them to sit in. And we have another one that Sandra is doing here, where the contractor is super engaged, and he said, I'm sending all my trades through the training course. So it's a good thing. We're having discussions. The builders are interested because they see the writing on the wall. So that's all good stuff that's happening here.
really great to see. Thanks, Scott.
You know, I love how positive it is, and yet, you know, we're in the city of Vancouver. It's one of the most progressive, and it's just not good enough for Scott. You know, that's how much he's just pushing for improvement. And Scott, again, most of us, I think we should just stop and just cheers you. But I think, why don't we just take a second and just cheers your entire team? One, for the Bold to take on this challenge and be bold with you, and Luke, who's working hard to make sure that all these details are taken care of. And boy, the spreadsheets look good. So cheers to all of you guys for moving the needle and not settling for the bare minimum. So, and again, we're lucky we've got some planners to move this forward. So thanks, Brian, for the question. And again, just another shout out, looking forward to the NAPHN conference next week. And I just love the phrase fun for all. So it's going to be a fun time. Over to Jeffrey.
Okay, great. Luke, so I absolutely love that chart that showed the trade-off between the compactness of the envelope and the required R values. How did you get the data for that? It was, I mean, the software and that kind of stuff, because is that like a standard thing, or?
So I think that chart is actually from a book, I think, called Passive House Design or something. And then all we do is we use the PHPP compactness ratio, and then just put it on that graph, and we can kind of see where it lies on the graph, and it actually matches pretty close to our PHPP U values.
Awesome.
Jeffrey, I suspect that chart would be fairly climate dependent, and quite honestly, we've never generated it. What's important is the effect of the curve. Like when you see how that little bit extra compactness can make a big difference in the U value, I think that's the key part of that chart. It's more the trend than the actual numbers. Yeah, I think that's important.
I'm actually thinking of it as a slide in a marketing deck.
Yeah.
To sort of communicate to builders that it's not all, when you say aggressive insulation, it's not all like R50 everywhere.
No, and you know, and it depends where you are, but obviously Vancouver, we've got this funny climate here where we don't have particularly cold winters, but we don't have a lot of sun either. So sometimes in the colder climates, you get more sun, and that solar heat gain becomes a bigger factor. But I think here we're trying to say, I think we're smart, especially in our multis, to really minimize those heat gains from solar. You need a little bit, but you know, especially a multi, you know, you got a north side, south side, they're so different, and you got to be really careful with that stuff. So that's something we're, you know, it's a lesson we're learning.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Excellent. And just on a side note too, for people that are looking to educate the builders, and if you're having a tough time connecting or finding, you know, an education system, I mean, a shout out to Passive House Canada, because now they're offering courses online and across, but you could also hire either BCIT or EMU or, you know, any of the FIAS educators, and you could just hire them and just teach your entire organization and just have, like, you know, bring them in and just have a one operation. So don't think that if there's a course that's kind of scheduled and doesn't work on your team's schedule, you can connect and see if they can work with your schedule. I know a lot of Ledcor, for example, you know, over a course of a month, they had a Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 4 where their team showed up. And so don't just think that some of these educators are fixed with their schedules. Reach out and talk to them, because they want to teach and want to work with you. So, and again, the fact that we have the power of online, we can teach anybody anywhere. And so, you know, you can even reach out to Daniel Cruz and you can get him to teach, you know, in the middle of the night if it means to. You know, you could just put on your earphones and, you know, the students can be listening to it as they're sleeping. So lots of opportunities for training. So reach out to the different resources. Next one in line is Shannon. Unless if you wanted to talk about this lovely graph.
Oh, I think Marie just wanted me to show this again.
Perfect.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for calling on me. I was curious to hear about where the builder came into the process, where Bold came in, and how active they were in the pricing and design. Because it sounded like they're pretty active.
Yeah, that's part of you know, a service that we provide all our clients is a pre-construction contract. So we get involved as early as we can. We'd love to be involved at the rezoning point, but I don't think many architects like to have us there at that point. Yeah, it's very helpful, not only in our passive house buildings, but also the other buildings that we're doing. We can bring a lot to the table in terms of materials and trades and that sort of thing that are relevant, that can lead to. I have trouble with the term value engineering, because I think in the industry it's basically seen as a way to make a building cheap. I'm really of the mind, and been working in pre-construction for about 10 years now in Vancouver. And because of the changing codes and so on, I think we're redefining the idea of value engineering, where we're trying to introduce the developers where the real value lies in putting their money, as opposed to just doing the same old thing. Scott was talking earlier about the step code and how it's changing the whole you know, ecosystem here in Canada. But in a way, in a strange way, we're seeing in Vancouver, I think that we're in the step code 3 now in BC, largely, not everywhere, which is quite stringent. Step code 4 is basically net zero, very close to passive house. But we're already seeing a you know, a confluence of cost, where the choice to go passive house is really, honestly, it's the way to go. I mean, it's especially when you start in some, like in the city of Vancouver, with their density bonuses, it actually makes the capital cost of building one of these buildings less expensive than your standard buildings that you're seeing going up. So that's quite unusual. We're used to arguing in the past that passive house and its life cycle will end up being, of course, less expensive. So I hope that wasn't too roundabout.
No, it was Paul, do you
value
have any
engineering.
advice for how to get the owners or the stakeholders to engage the builder earlier? Because I agree with you. I think that value engineering has a negative connotation, and a proactive or a post-active participation phase rather than proactive, you know. And do you do any marketing in that arena, or do you have any words of wisdom for those of us trying to convince our owners and stakeholders to bring the builders in earlier for this type of service?
Well, if you can get in the room, and you can start speaking from experience and introducing people to the best technology available. It's amazing how you can change the conversation. Unfortunately, up until now, speaking to education and awareness, the building community, even in some very sophisticated, mid-rise concrete multi-residential buildings, we've seen that the business as usual crowd is just their idea of value engineering, as I spoke to before, is just cutting corners. We've had some very interesting experiences where we've been brought in. And in one case, we were brought in by the bank to take a look at a project that was floundering for cost reasons, and actually increase the value of the building by bringing in just better systems, smarter systems, and save them an enormous amount of money. So that's the marketing that you do. It's not something that you can, I don't know how you'd flog that. I think you just have to try and get in the room with them and say, the best dollars you're going to spend are right at the beginning, where you've got this kind of team that you put together, work with the architects like Cornerstone, and put together a package, and you'll build the value as you go. It's tough. I'm doing it all the time, and unfortunately, I'd say in my current experience, it's about 1 out of 10 that wants to go this route.
Thank you.
I feel like, Paulie, when you said improving, you should have definitely done the Dr. Evil and said millions and put up your pinky. So we'll come to that in a second. We're going to move over to Zach.
All right, thank you. So I've been thinking about common cause and common purpose, and I think a lot of us on this call have a sense of common purpose. And so do these organizations that support the Passive House Accelerator. So I want to encourage everybody to include them in your projects when you have the chance, and to thank them. So big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification, RDH Building Science, Rockwool North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsor is SIGA. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority. And our patron sponsors are AeroBarrier, BR+A Consulting Engineers, Brennan Air Tightness and Insulation, Inotech Windows and Doors, and US Engineered Wood T-Stud. So big thank you to our supporters and sponsors. Next week, we have on Passive House Accelerator Construction Tech, a presentation from Romania. So Marius Sofleti of Creative Engineering will be presenting about the largest passive house office building in Eastern Europe, and also lots of CLT going on here. So really interesting project. On the happy hour on the eve of the North American Passive House Network Conference, we're going to see a Buildings of Excellence winner, so a NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence winner project, Crown Heights Passive House, presented by Caitlin and Tony from Cycle Architecture and Planning. So that will be super interesting, I think, and close to the site of the physical conference of the hybrid conference in New York. And then, of course, we've got the North American Passive House Network Conference on Thursday and Friday of next week. You can catch it anywhere in the world online, and you can catch it in person in New York. And we've got a special discount code for the Accelerator. And we shared this in chat earlier. I'll share it again for everybody. Again, on Thursday, at the end of the Thursday session, we'll be doing an online social hosted by the Passive House Accelerator, so that folks who've been attending the conference can interact and meet some presenters and have some social time. And then on June 24th, we have Centering Equity in Passive House, a community workshop that will be co-presented and led by Astrid County and Johnny Rezvani. This is an outgrowth of their participation in the Centering Equity in Green Buildings committee and effort at the NAACP. So we're really looking forward to this community-wide event on June 24th. I think that's it. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for spending your evening with us, Scott, Paul, Jeremy, and Luke. And I think we probably still have some more questions. So let's go ahead and roll on into the after hour. For those of you who need to move on with your evening, thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you again next week.
Excellent. Let's kick off the after hour. Prudence, I love how your dog is super excited about the after hour as well. So we are going to start with Joe, and I did Tom and Mr. iPhone. I did see, sorry, Dale, we're going to mute you. I did see your hands and I've added you in the queue. So Joe, why don't we start with you? I'm just going to update the question queue.
Awesome presentation, guys. Very cool project. I'm a little bit of a building science newbie, so things like solar gain are quite confusing to me. And I was wondering how you balance, sorry about the noise going on here. How do you balance the usefulness of the sun in the winter when you're having to pay to heat your home versus having to cool your home in the summer? How do you balance those two things?
I'm not, sorry, Joe. I just put your question into the chat just because you got some background noise, so it's all good. Luke or Scott, maybe this is a question for you. When looking at solar gain, it seems that mostly concerned with avoiding too much heat in summer. How do you balance this against any potential solar gain in the heat in the winter?
Well, I think the key here is going to be those solar blinds and how we have them programmed. And we haven't used them before, but we know that there's a programming exercise. So it'll depend a little bit on outdoor climate conditions and when they're going to be up and when they're going to be down. And I think anytime one does a passive house building, you have to commission it and you have to go back and you have to monitor it. And you have to know what's going on. And I know SMT is involved in monitoring, and we're talking to them about a project we're doing that's an almost passive house. Unfortunately, it's hooked to district energy and a bunch of terrible gas, and the politics are impossible to deal with. But I think the idea here is you have to commission your building, you have to check your systems, and you have to be prepared to go back, because we're not sure how well the supplier cooling is going to work. We're going to have to, how are we controlling it? Are we controlling on return air temperature? There's a bunch of things like that that I just know we're not going to know until we get through a summer and a winter and another summer, right? And so those are all things that I think it's difficult, and you really need to tell your clients, we got to maintain this building for a couple of years to really know how it's going to work.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks, Joe, for the question. And I know, again, Scott, just have to commend you and your team at Cornerstone, because you have done a few passive house projects that didn't go as well as you had planned, and you and the rest of the team went back and fixed them and tweaked them. And that information has been invaluable to the rest of the community. And we kind of always talk about high performance windows, and I always tell clients, put brackets exterior shading, just so that it's least in the discussions, because sometimes the buildings can't design it in, and we need to look at it. I'm glad that you guys found a solution that's going to work for this project. So looking forward to seeing the results. And I know Mike Aarons, who's one of the architectural reps with Innotech, and I see George is here, but Mike added these particular units on his passive house, and I know it's working out quite well. So looking forward to seeing on a bigger scale project. So next in the queue, and we've got a couple more added, but Justin Taylor. I think Justin's still with us. Or did he hop off? Nope, Justin left. So moving over to Enrique. Sorry, Enrique.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is whether you have some sort of vestibule in the office or commercial area of the first floor, and what's the strategy to either heat it or cool it, because the standard practice here is to have a tremendous airflow of hot air when you open the door and you close the door. And we are in the process of upgrading our code here. And this is one of the key questions, what to do with the vestibule, how to do, because it impacts greatly the heat energy, the heating energy or cooling energy that you have to keep that area at the same level of the rest of the building.
So here, I'm going to answer that. A vestibule, to be effective, has to be 7 by 7. So what's that? 49 square feet at $1,000 a square foot. That's $50,000. So that's the problem we have. Now, that being said, we do have a vestibule from at the main residential entry. So that is vestibuled, but the individual retail units are not required to be vestibuled unless they're over, I think it's like, there's a number like 10,000 square feet. Like if it was a retail, like a grocery store or something like that, we would do it. But these little small tenancies, you know, that it's a lot of square footage out of some of these small tenancies. And Vancouver is a mild enough climate that it's not as critical. I mean, if you're in Edmonton, I'm former Edmonton, there would be much more critical. But in Vancouver, not such a big deal. And our other problem is we have all these disability access rules here that are quite stringent. And they need a lot of space. And that's why I say, you know, vestibule can be $50,000. So it's difficult for us to do that.
Thank you.
Scott, I feel for your Edmonton Oilers, maybe next year. Heading over to Tom in Miami.
Thanks, John. Looping all the way back to the beginning, I was hoping to jump into the conversation from Bronwyn about planners and massing of buildings. So I'm both, actually. So I'm an architect and an urban planner. And we all have to go back to our architectural training and think about, you know, our Nolly plans and negative space versus positive space. And we are constantly up against that challenge of light and air to the street, you know, height and setback. Once upon a time, New York City actually had certain zoning districts where the sky exposure plane was a sine curve. You know, it wasn't up to, you know, to a street wall in a vertical line and then an angled straight line as a setback. You could actually do a kind of sine curve and a cut and paste in volume to stack floor area to maximize floor area ratio. We're still dealing with that. I think if we want to like minimize, you know, one tactic to minimize thermal bridges is actually to follow that zoning envelope, which has a sky exposure plane. So we're going to get, you know, there's a potential for some new pyramidal buildings that could take that maximal advantage of what the zoning ordinance requires in a particular, you know, in a particular jurisdiction. So it's this tussle that's kind of going on, and it's going to be that way forever, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because it allows us to talk about this shit in interesting ways. But there's outside space versus and inside space, and we're having the challenge of dealing with both. You know, so the planners tend to be more involved with the negative space, that what's going on outside, and light and air to the street. And light and air to one's neighbors, versus us building designers who are dealing with the inside space and how do we minimize thermal bridges and how do we maximize envelope performance. So it's an ongoing challenge. Bronwyn and I have been having a side conversation going on tonight, and I'm happy to be involved in that. Talk, discuss among ourselves.
Yeah. We'll wait for breakout rooms, but I mean, Scott, I can't believe your patience for the amount of urban design review meetings you've attended over the last 2 years. I think, you know, your entire life has been sucked into that vortex, and you've challenged and berated and argued and fought and every little bit of stuff. So again, commend you for your time because it hasn't been easy.
Yeah, the truth is here, it'd be better to build an upside down pyramid because that way the walls don't get wet, the windows get shaded. And the more valuable real estate's on the top floor with the big suites. Perfect.
They tried that in Boston and it didn't seem to work out so well.
Yeah, gravity, such a struggle.
Challenge, you know?
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Okay, we got Ian's iPhone now. I believe he turned his camera off. So Ian's iPhone, are you there? Oh, there we go.
Hi there. Thank you. Just a quick question about the peak. Being a mixed use of commercial and residential, I ran a lot of time to the problem of what are you doing with the commercial unit as far as the entrance door to commercial units, the way to address ADA approval and the way to address automatic hardware, panic hardware, and on the same time maintain the passive house requirement. And I know there is simple solution of surface mount panic, but those doesn't really provide the performance that the door usually provide on its own. So I wonder if you had any resolution in that manner.
I don't know if George from Initech's still on here, but if he is, jump in.
Yes, still here. Listening in. It's basically an automated gear, multi-point blocky gear that is automated via low voltage motors, and you have to. There's controls that will be attached to it, and it's a UPVC door, and the technology has been around for quite some time. We just haven't really used it because it's a bit more expensive when you come to those kind of applications, and in the past it wasn't really a demand for it, so we're using this project as a kind of a pilot project to test all these gears out. And the gears, it's nothing new, it's been around, but it's just we haven't been selling them in Canada here until now.
And if I may ask, this gear is also supporting the panic or just for the automatics?
Yeah, so yeah, it supports the panic hardware as well. And it has to work in combination with automatic openers, door openers and all that. So it's a bit, I think it's easiest to actually look at the door once it's all finished and trying to explain here in long terms how it all works together, but there's a complicated automated system that needs to be all connected. So it's a bit more complex than, but from a high level point of view, it's all integrated. And then the doors, I think the big thing is usually the door sills. And so that is where you lose a lot. And so we recess the door sills into the flooring, and then you insulate as well under and against the door sills, and that's where you lose most of your thermal efficiencies. And that's part of this door system where you have a nice gasket fitted into that system that will give you some fairly good air tightness, but also good thermal performance on the sill.
Thank you. Thank you for the detailed answer.
Yeah. No, it's not, the panic hardware and those components are not PHI certified. I mean, just for clarification. Right? Yeah.
But again, George,
it has a high thermal value, but it's not a PHI certified component.
And just on that point too, George, I commend you guys for, I mean, I know this was like a Monty wish list, a Scott wish list for years to get this kind of door system to the market. And so the fact that you're able to provide something for Scott and the rest of the local Pasos community. And just a quick question, just because I happen to be checking out the Inotech factory on Friday, do you guys have a sample of this door, or is it still waiting for?
Yeah, there is a sample actually in the shop that is a working mock-up that we did a mock-up for this particular project.
Zach, I see a potential video for next week. I'll see what I can do on Friday.
Awesome.
All right, George, I'll connect with you on Friday. or with Adrian to make sure I can look at that. Great question. And again, that's kind of one of those products that we're like, hey, we need something. And I know Scott's worked on a bunch of different solutions over the last couple of projects. So looking forward to seeing this. So thanks, Ian, for your question. And we're going to go over to another iPhone who has his hand up. So let's go ahead.
Hello.
There we go. Great. Ask your question.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for presentation. I was just curious about the size of the windows, since you run into the question of shades and the system of how do we do shades. Could you have gone for a little bigger windows? What are the factors that make you decide about the exact size of it?
I'm going to let Luke answer that one. It's his building.
Oh, I think in this case, because the shades were changed after the fact, some windows were actually too big for the shades, and we had to leave a small gap at the bottom unshaded. But those were, I think, only the deck windows. All the other ones were okay. I think it's based on the Innotech and MHZ shades.
Yeah, so you're right now, the window sizes on that project, they're basically maxed out for the shades because you have fabrics, and depending on the fabric you choose, those things should really be considered ahead of time, because depending on the opacity and light transmission and low E coatings, they're all like, these fabrics all have low E coatings, so they're heat reflective coatings on the fabrics. That is something that people don't realize. And the fabrics that have a woven fabric, it's actually, the fabric is called the Ferrari fabric, so you'll have a Ferrari on your building. Those things should be considered ahead of time because every product has its limitations, and in this case the limitation was just the window size that you saw there. So you may be ending up with 1 inch of glass while possibly not covered on the tall windows, but that doesn't really affect the shading to any great degree.
I guess we should have chosen red if we knew it was going to be Ferrari.
That's it. So let's just dive into that. So you have a pretty integral part of the design of the building that didn't come into play until you figured out that, that screen. So how far down the rabbit hole on design did you have to get to before you had to go back and fix the windows? Is this why Luke doesn't sleep, because he's working late nights to fix his model?
I don't actually think we've updated the PHPP, have we? I don't think we did.
Not yet, no.
Yeah.
I have to jump in here, Sean. I'm afraid that the decision to go to those to these screens was one that was basically driven by cost. The other systems that were being contemplated were very, very costly and had a big impact on the envelope. This system from MHZ has obviously been worked on in Europe with tilt and turn window manufacturers, and is a very, very cost-effective solution. Especially there's other solar blind manufacturers, but they all involve hard wiring to the shade. These ones are built on as George has said previously, on a solar rechargeable battery system. And also have we didn't touch on it in the presentation, but they also have RF instruments on every elevation. So as well as being able to be individually operated, the system can open and close these blinds on an elevation based on solar gain, or in the case of high winds, will retract them so that they don't get damaged. So it's a pretty good package, and for the cost that was involved in it, we encouraged the client, we encouraged Cornerstone. It didn't take much to encourage Cornerstone. Scott was on board right from the beginning. But it did involve, by the way, we didn't touch on it, Scott, we had to go back to the city for a DPMA on that, didn't we?
Yeah, which we just got this week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's lots of bureaucracy.
I want to interject with something, so I apologize to the next, but yeah, I'll wait. Let's keep going with the questions. Vincent, you're up next because I think you might ask the question that I want to ask. So, Vincent.
Yeah, hopefully this might sound like a really rudimentary question, but so like congratulations to the project team. It's really impressive the amount of detail and innovation. So for me to ask this, it might sound a bit kind of backwards, but how did you deal with the balconies in terms of thermal bridging? So I guess I missed the part. Is this a concrete construction or light wood frame? And so how did you deal with the thermal bridges? Because it's always been kind of like a pet peeve for designers and how to deal with it.
Well, I think in this case, most of our balconies are independently framed with columns on them. So we kept them fairly independent. Yeah. Remember though that we are using wood. Wood is a pretty good insulator in and of itself. So the bigger issue tends to be, how do you deal with the wood cantilevered beam as it comes through the air barrier? Yeah. So you don't want to bring your joists out. We typically bring one beam out, and it can't be like a 3-ply beam. It's got to be a solid beam so that you can tape around it, keep it airtight as it punctures your air barrier. So really that's the key, right? Is how do you deal? Because remember that our air barrier is wrapping the floor joist ends. So a beam that comes through that, and there are a few that do, we're going to have to wrap them. And I know we have a couple thermal bridges where there's a couple pieces of steel that we needed just for seismic issues, mostly because of all the stepping the building did. And so there's a couple of those where we buried them partway through the wall, and there's probably a thermal bridge, a smaller thermal bridges there. They're all isolated, but maybe they don't have the full R value on them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Vincent. Moving over to Matt. Just double check Matt's still here. Matt, I see you're here. Just Matt, you hiding somewhere? Go ahead and unmute if you're here. Otherwise, I'm going to go over to Jason because I know he's outside chilling, enjoying the nice Vancouver weather. Go ahead, Jason. Uh-oh, where did he go?
He's muted. Oh, he's not live.
Uh-oh, you came outside, enjoyed the nice balcony, and somehow you lost your audio. So his question was, I got your back, my friend. What does Cornerstone do for occupant training for multi-unit buildings? How has this changed over time? Great question, and hopefully a great answer.
I think the problem is a lot of the buildings we're doing are rentals, and that actually makes it difficult to engage with the owners. Now, we do have Little Mountain co-housing, which I think is going to be a fabulous project for that. And I don't think with COVID, we haven't really gotten in there and actually done an in-person training, but we have left manuals in our buildings. We've left little stickers on windows to show people how to operate the windows. But occupant training is an interesting question. And I think what we'd like to do is actually have a little plaque or something you mount on the inside of the closet door or something that gives you a little education. And we haven't done a good job on that yet, but those are all things that are in our head of things we could do to improve. It'd be nice to have a little synopsis of here's what you need to know because you're living in a passive house. Yeah, so that's a good question.
Yeah. Jason, I think that we need to figure out how to have a passive house social as like a, here's the community you're all renting. We'll provide you with, root beers and chips, and we'll teach you about what you've just got yourself into, because there's got to be something like that.
For the Heights, we actually have the plaque sitting right here at my desk, and yeah, there it is right there. And I've got that for three rental buildings. I have these plaques sitting on my desk. We haven't been able to do anything with them because of COVID, but I think maybe that would be an opportunity to at least invite some of the owners and the renters and at least have that kind of a little educational thing. So, it's a good suggestion, Jason. We'll try to incorporate that in when we do these things, hopefully later in the summer. Yeah.
So Jason,
I'm just going to bump in here and say We put an article on that in our developer's guide last year. I'm just finding the link. I'll post it in your. But we had a couple of owners write that as a start, so I'll post a link to that in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
We started it. Let's build on it and make it better.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thanks, Bronwyn, and then also thanks for putting in the link too about the cost barriers. Another great piece of research and data from NEPHN. So thanks, Bronwyn. Sorry, we are going over to, just missed my point, Jason. So we'll get over to Jeff. Jeff, you get to have the Harvey question tonight.
Yeah, right. I didn't see Harvey here, so.
Yep, someone had to be Harvey. Go for it.
Do it for him. So, Paul, the question was, so Scott, what is the size of the largest window? And Paul, how much do the shades cost per shade?
And Paul, to the penny, by the way, we want exact pricing here because, you know,
well, I'm going to defer. I'm going to defer that to the project manager for the project. I'm just the overview guy. I'll let Jeremy answer that question. I'm sure he's got it on the tip of his tongue.
Yeah, he's frantically looking at the spreadsheet. I'm actually trying to stall to give him a few more minutes as he's looking for that invoice that says this is what it costs. Come on, Jeremy, give us the answer.
I don't have the Excel right now, but we got a good price because it was the first project, I think, in Vancouver. But I think it was below 2,000 per window. And with some other, with the sliding shades, we were higher than that. So we're like, overall, it was like probably like 30% lower.
Oh my goodness.
And
but
the sliding.
Doesn't a window cost like 1,000 per window?
Probably in the 500 to 700.
And so now you're paying 3 or 4 times for the shade.
But Jeff, think about it though, right? Is, you know, what that shade is doing. So, you know, this is that whole value, you know, question of like, yeah, it costs money, but what is it doing to help out the passive house principles?
Of course.
So,
of course.
You know,
I just, you know, I would hope there might be, you know, something else coming down the pike that might help it, the cost. But in any event, Scott, you remember what the size of the largest windows were?
It's going to be Luke.
Width-wise, it's around six feet by around 7'6" or something like that.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah,
that's definitely big.
Jeff, everything is about quantities. How many you want to buy?
It's it. We get, you know, economies of scale discounts here.
Gotcha.
No, Jeff, it is a good question. And I mean, what I like about this is like this device is typically, or we haven't, you know, spoke about this exterior shading in North American projects, and yet it's pretty common in Europe. And yet we were like, oh, we'll just put the blinds inside because that's what we like. And now we're being like, oh, we need to follow again the Europeans in the next step. And now we're going to the next level. And, you know, again, Scott is again on the leading edge, and Paul's kind of keeping it to make sure he's not on the bleeding edge with this project. So it's a fine line. And again, another project, another product that is being offered. Hopefully we'll get local supplier manufacturers to reduce that cost, but we do have to start somewhere. And here we are.
So another quick question, if I could.
Yeah. So for this solution, it's also important to know that the detailing was way easier. So there was also a big saving there, because on the other system, we had to do a lot of detailing and put some bend plates and all the envelope details that would cost way higher.
Sure. So do you try to, how clear is the glass? And do you try to keep it clear, or you just deal with whatever the solar heat gain coefficient requires?
The glass that's going in, Jeff, in the peak is, and George can back me up on this, but I believe it's Cardinal 366 and another coating, which is the sort of maximum coating that you can do for solar heat gain. It's very, very low solar heat gain coefficient. Probably on future buildings, and Scott can speak more to this, because I know Luke speculated about it, that with these solar blinds, we can start holding up on those low E coatings actually in the glazing. If we're careful about it, and then can get the best of both worlds, which is solar shading when you need it, and basically in the wintertime you can get some advantage from the solar gain, the heat gain. That's pretty much it. I didn't speak before about my favorite hobby horse is for passive cooling. Is again, it goes related to these windows very much. That these large tilt and turn windows have this function where, of course, you all know they turn like a door to the inside. And if you're clever about the way you design the building and have these up at the right height, so that the mullion in the window actually creates a guard, then the window the user can instead of just tilting the window for light ventilation, they can actually open it 100%, and just get a lot of air coming into their unit. It's something that we see. I've seen it in Europe, and here all of our windows are really very measly. They don't give us much room to ventilate in new buildings. So that's another big feature of just a very simple design, passive design element that we're seeing with these kind of windows. The other one for me is, of course, from visiting Hawaii, of course, and being introduced to the ubiquity of ceiling fans. Again, I see a big future for ceiling fans in passive buildings. So the combination of these things, solar blinds, fully operable windows, fully opening windows, and ceiling fans, and you can create a system of comfort in a building, whether it's passive or not, I think.
So on that point too, Paul, do you include your solar shading in your cooling budget line item instead of being its own line item? So then you're just like, oh, it's part of the cooling system. That's the budget item it falls into.
That's a very good thing. In the past 10 years, there were a lot of glass towers, glass mid-rises built on Cambie Street, and I was involved in quite a few of them. And one of the biggest, easiest low-hanging fruit with developers was encouraging them to use very low solar heat gain coefficients even in double glazing, and seeing how the glazing coefficient, the glazing factor, would reduce the size of these enormous mechanical cooling systems in these buildings. It's phenomenal. I was like blown away. You can scale back the size of the cooling system by up to, we saw with double glazing, getting the proper solar low E coatings, we could scale back the mechanical system up to 40% in some cases. So that there's real. I mean, I was speaking to that earlier when we were talking about value engineering. That's pretty much a lot of the low-hanging fruit, really. I mean, I think all of this understanding of these things is going to become much more widespread in the years to come. But it's for some reason it seems to be rocket science right now.
Yeah.
I noticed a comment from Bronwyn about window cleaning with inside opening windows. So I wanted to let people know, I mean, one of the big issues with windows, of course, if you're on the 6th floor, is falling out of them. And, it's got to have a 3'6" high sill. But we found a device called a wink house, and it's designed so that you can actually open the window fully and clean it. But the moment you close it, it re-engages to the tilt and turn function. So it's still got a safety piece, and it's got a little Allen key, so you can actually screw it tight so it can't be opened by anybody at all, and just undo it when you want to clean the windows. But it does have these two little devices you can squeeze and open the window if you're happy that you're not smart enough to fall or dumb enough to fall out your window. But I think it's a good device, and we're now speccing them every time we spec the windows.
Interesting. Thanks, Scott. We're going to head over to Vincent. Back to you, Vincent.
I have a question about the foundation. So with all the passive house towers going up in Vancouver, I've kind of been curious about how to insulate and thermally break the massive foundations required. So can you speak about what your strategy and solution was for this project?
Luke might be able to get to a section, but we typically are insulating on top of the slab. It's difficult because you've got two different elevations of slab. Some of them, you know, it's the main floor slab over the parkade. It's the second floor slab over the loading dock and some of the other pieces. So I don't know if Luke's got a good section to show you, but so it's a combination of insulating below and insulating on top. And sometimes you just ignore the point thermal bridges where you just account for them where the columns go through. Or sometimes we insulate down the columns a couple feet just to improve it. And we're having those discussions on a couple buildings we're doing right now. But you see this one's a split insulated floor. So I don't know if you see that detail there. So it's insulated on top and it's insulated below. And that helps us deal with thermal bridges and other things. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and you've done that detail on a few.
Yeah, I've heard the big towers in Vancouver. A lot of them are taking the main floor, that bottom floor, out of the thermal envelope. So it's passive house from the second floor up, but not the main floor. I've heard that from a couple of people working on it.
Interesting. Oh, thanks.
All right, thanks, Vincent. And I thought we could go back to kind of that comment, Paul, just about the integrated design process and when you guys were brought in. And have you guys, reached out to architects and developers to see how you guys could be engaged sooner, maybe as like a fee before you're hired on as the builder, just to be involved earlier in these discussions to provide some insight and of your experience?
Absolutely. We offer pre-construction services to just about every client that comes in if we catch it. I mean, there's no point doing pre-construction if they've already got a baked-in building permit. But if we can come in at least before the issue for tender drawings and help shape some of the design decisions that are made around that, typically we have a proposal that involves, an upset fee for the actual pre-construction phase, and the pre-construction phase has its own budget as well for any costs that have to be incurred other than just management fees. And we put a time frame on it, usually a time frame of 6 to 12 months, and we just bill it out continuously until we use it up. And we also very often offer a discount to the client of up to, say, 50% of the pre-construction fee if we're successful in closing a construction management or fixed price contract with them at the end of the process. So that's how we do it.
Great. No, I mean, again, it's getting through these change orders by designing them out. And Scott, maybe another question for you guys too is, in this particular design, did you guys create a digital twin so that the design team can look at class detections and be able to dive into some of these tricky spots? Or was it just relied in the mock-up?
I think Paul can speak to that. Our framer is doing a lot of that.
So the framer's the digital twin?
Yeah, or Jeremy. Anyways, we're using Mitsui Homes.
Ah, got it.
And they're been coordinating with the mechanical trade where the pipes are going through, making sure that we don't have conflicts in the structural framing with where they want to locate these things. So that's been all on Bold's part, not on our part, in terms of working with their trades. And the trades have been very cooperative. It's been a really good process. And everybody's really trying to make it easy on everybody else as much as possible, for sure.
And so, Jeremy, what software is Mitsui using for, or is it CADWorks or Vectorworks, or what are they using?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, no worries. This whole digital twin thing is fascinating to me. And again, just the fact that we can review things before we get to the job site, and the framer was like, hey, that's not going to work. And we're like, yeah, we might have thought about that. So
it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because the next one we're doing, the call yesterday was, we don't want to pre-frame it. We want to stick frame it on site. And we're talking about that. And there's some good reasons for it, actually. And a lot of it has to do with access. It's on Hastings Street. You can't really block the traffic. It's a real problem. The lane is difficult. There's power lines in the way. There's all kinds of reasons for it. And to try to bring the big panels in, they're a little concerned about that. So we're looking at some kind of a way of still trying to do that detection that somehow, you know, maybe every time there's a layout on a floor so that the joists don't get put in the right place when the framers go, it might be something that's more field done rather than done on the drawings, or maybe there's a drawing done that's sort of like a template so that the framers got something to follow. But that's something we're working on in another project right now, a passive house.
Interesting. I know Polygon, for example, they use their parkade as the prefab site. So maybe that's something that these framers can do and kind of speed things up with a little bit of that pre-done. So if you can't bring it in the panels, they just come out of the basement. Or again, depending, they could just be built on the slab, but maybe it's faster to have a few stacks moving forward. So who knows? Where are we at? Okay, we got a few minutes before we need to wrap things up. I was going to try to do a breakout room, but Zach is cooking dinner, so I don't have the controls.
Well, hot water is an interesting thing, right? Hot water is an interesting thing. So we've had a lot of discussions about hot water in a bunch of our projects, but we keep coming back to the sand and heat pumps, and now they've got the water drop system, and I don't know if anybody knows about what that is, but it's basically a prepackaged system for about 50 suites. It's got heat pumps, everything. You can just drop it on your roof or drop it into your parquet. And Paul will tell you, it's as cheap as gas now. And we think that we can, you know, given climate change and given the fact that we're getting more and more carbon taxes, if you're doing the right thing, like BC is, it's going to be cost competitive pretty fast in the long term, for sure, on operations.
Yeah, agreed, Scott. I think we did the numbers, and given 5 years of carbon tax, it's going to make no sense to continue with gas boilers at all. It'll go to CO2 heat pumps or something equivalent.
That's for last night.
Yeah, no, it's good. I was going to say is, I mean, Gary Klein would be happy with some of the things you've done. I mean, even the details of the lines. I mean, that's a lot of good details that you guys have discussed. Sorry, I thought Mr. iPhone had his hand up again, but I think we took care of that. I think I've gotten through all the questions. If I missed any, please jump on. Now, we didn't get into a breakout room, so maybe if we want to just do, Zach, if you want to do maybe a 7-minute, get a chance to connect. There's lots going on tonight, so we didn't, or this morning, depending on where you're at. Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right. If you got to leave, go enjoy your night or your morning. But if you want to hang out and meet a few people, see you in one of the breakout rooms.
All right. See you in a little bit.
Hey, everybody. We're back. A few of us have gone on with your days or evenings, so wherever you are, hopefully they're doing well. Scott, I guess you now get the unofficial title of being having the most times presenting on the happy hour with, I think it's their third time. So again, this is what happens when you have 18 or 19 projects in your pipeline. You got a lot to show off. So again, bravo for being a leader and doing all this. And for those that don't know this, Scott and I were actually in the same consulting class in 2014 with Andre Herman and Guido. It was pretty awesome to be in that group of people with some very smart people. And I remember he was talking about getting his first passive house project, which is now the Heights, and it's got a few. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the chat back working here. Oops. So congrats to that honor. And again, Giza definitely has the honor of the most slides in a presentation. So the Cornerstone team has a few records on the happy hour.
There's so many more. There's no such thing as too much Scott Kennedy.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. I agree. No, I'm sorry. Barbara, do you want to ask your question? Just because I'm trying to do too many things at the same time and I can't read it and manage the dial. So where are you, Barbara? You find that mute button.
Not actually my question, actually Cameron Duncan's question. It's what's the name of the gizmo on the tilt and turn window so that we know what to look for?
Oh, now Scott's got to hit the mute button.
It's a wink house, and I did put it in the chat, but I'll find it again and I'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah. And before you go to save the chat, because again, Bronwyn put a whole bunch of good links. There's some other good links. So that website, I'm sure, is buried in there. And
yeah, and just so you know that the chat gets edited and all the links get consolidated down into one spot. So you can go and look for the link you want, and they are all tested and work.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff, for doing that too, because that's, again, time out of your day, and it's a great feat. So thank you for doing that for us, Jeff.
Well, it's fun. I get to read all the chats again.
And of course, just so you know too, this is just the main chats. All the little private stuff doesn't get in there because
that's right.
You know, we keep the gossip to ourselves and dive into the nuggets.
I read them all before I delete them. So.
Zach knows all the hidden details of our conversations now. Well, I think let's wrap it up there, folks. It's 5:55, so there's lots of PHs in that time frame. What's going on here? So tomorrow you have BS and Beer, which has our good friend Ed May. Friday with Mark has BS Fridays, has Bronwyn and Ken to have a little bit of the NEPHN conference kickoff before it actually starts next week. So it's a preview session. Hopefully you guys will get caught up with the Passive House podcasts. It's crazy. I'm still on. I think I'm finally into 2021. I think I finally passed that threshold. I'm behind, and I actually had a good chat with Matt the Color Wilson show. There might be a podcast about me coming up in the next few weeks. We'll see what happens. Hopefully you guys will enjoy my story in Passive House. Monday, not much going on. Then again, we have got the construction tech happy hour, and then I'm going to call it the virtual Passive House bar next Thursday. Come join me and the rest of the virtual that aren't get a chance to go to New York. We will have lots of fun and as we gather. So and there's lots going on next week. Look out to the weekly update that Zach puts out. Next week's a big Passive House week. So stay tuned for all that, and everyone be safe. Again, take some time to think about how you treat other humanoids. Hopefully we can be nicer and create a better planet, because if we're trying to save the planet, we got to figure out how to coexist. So on that note, good night, everybody. I'll miss you.